Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much, Kay, for that beautiful meditation. Thank you, Judy, for all your assistance this morning. Thank each of you for being here this morning. Reverend Francie had asked me to do a message while they were away. And although I am a minister, I've never spoken in a unity church because I'm not a unity minister. I am a holiness minister, but I don't plan to do any holy rolling this morning.
Do that another time.
I'm speaking on, I don't know if my message is up. Well, I'll repeat together our statement of truth. I am a child of God. I am deserving of good in my life. I am accepting my good now. My message this morning, or my talk this morning, is on weeding and seeding for spiritual growth. And I chose that message because my garden means a lot to me. I'm an avid gardener. I love gardening. Gardening for me is very hard work, but it's very rewarding work. My spiritual life is very difficult for me. But it's the most rewarding thing I believe that I'm doing on this earth today. But there are lots of parallels between my physical garden and my spiritual garden. So I thought that I would take this message and try to perhaps bring to you all some of the things that I feel make this spiritual life for me a little bit easier. And I do that through my garden. So I just want to perhaps share with you, and I pray that I perhaps say something that will benefit each of you on your way as well. To me, gardening is an active participation in one of the deepest mysteries of the universe. I don't know why a small, dry, seemingly lifeless seed buried into the earth can spring forth and produce an abundant crop of nourishing food. But I see it happening over and over each season. And I never cease to be amazed and awestruck by the wonder of it all. Each year I plant tomato seeds, and each year my faith is renewed when I see the first tiny fruit appear on the vine. For I know that I only planted the seed, but it was a divine creator that infused into that seemingly lifeless seed and caused it to burst forth with life. But more importantly, that divine source had implanted within that tiny seed the perfect pattern of a tomato even before the tomato started to grow. Therefore, it seems to my reason that if the divine creator has planted within that tiny seed a perfect pattern, there should be a perfect pattern planted within me as well. But unlike that tiny seed that has no doubt about its divine self, it is not always easy for me to believe that I have the perfect pattern of the divine within me. You know, living at this earth level, it's easy for me to lose sight of this perfect divine pattern. Seeing conditions every day, it sometimes becomes hard to truly realize, is there a God power within me? But then, you know, I remember that the tomato seed did not show forth the fullness of its divine pattern until it was cultivated. I realized that in order for me to awaken and to know without a doubt my true divine self, I must be willing to make a deeper commitment to discovering that which has been implanted within me, that which at the right conditions will bloom forth into the full divinity of my divine self. But just as with my physical garden, I realize that I must work too to cultivate that which is in me, to be brought out into physical manifestation. But how do I cultivate and bring forth spiritual growth? I must begin at a soul level, or level of consciousness. You know, in the metaphysical world, soil represents our consciousness. And in the Unity Metaphysical Bible, or dictionary, it states that man's soul is his consciousness. And that the soul touches both the inner realm of spirit form from which it receives its inspiration. Our soul or our consciousness receives impressions from the divine realm, but our consciousness receives impressions from the external as well as from the divine. And this is often where it gets to be a problem for me. It's not, of course, those inspirations that come from the divine, but it's these external things that make it difficult for me sometimes. Because my words, my thoughts can hinder me. Some of these things I call weed thoughts. Thoughts that, if allowed to take root in my consciousness, becomes pain-producing. Thoughts that can choke the very joy out of your life if I allow them to take root in my consciousness. You know, these weed thoughts always take the shape of fear and limitations. Thoughts that would have me believe that I'm not capable in every way of reaching and maintaining my best and highest good. I must at all times be on guard to weed out all such limiting thoughts. I must be willing each day to take the tools of prayer and meditation to keep the soil of my consciousness free of any thoughts that do not serve my highest good. For just as plants desire to grow to the light and away from the darkness, I too desire to grow to the light of my greater good. I realize that the soil though, has to be nurtured and fortified if it's to continue to produce constantly that which is good. Each day I feel that it is important for me to plant my hopes and my dreams and my intentions. I can't just say what I want. I have to make it a conscious intention to live by these thoughts and these dreams. Sometimes, as I say, at this earthly level, we may say, I'm too old. I don't have enough education. I'm not smart enough. I'm not the right color to make my dreams come true. But I know that these are weed thoughts that I have to weed out of my consciousness. I can allow these thoughts to take root into my soul. For each new day is a day that I have never seen before. And a day that, I will never have that day again. But I know that in order for me to make that day what I need it to be for my soul growth, I have to, just as I do in my garden, be willing to do the work that I need to do. For as I say, each day is a day that I've never seen before, and one that I never will have again. However, I know that whatever I sow in this day is what I will reap tomorrow. I cannot sow discord and confusion and expect to reap peace and happiness. I know that I cannot expect to reap the best fruit if I am willing or unwilling to control my behavior and cultivate my thoughts. The potential for me, I say potential, for me to live to my best and highest good is always there. But potential is not actuality. But the potential is there for me to grow. But I cannot expect a ready-made garden. If I sincerely want to live to my highest each day and be my best self each day, I know that I must weed out fear and anger. I must cultivate the soil of understanding and plant words that bless and heal. Gardening to me is very meditative. For me, I can work very intently for hours and peacefully bring about that greater good in my physical garden. But I cherish the time that I spend making contact with the vibrations of the earth. I enjoy that. Each day I dig the weed, I plant, I water, I fertilize, and await my harvest. That is how I grow my garden in the physical and also in the spiritual. I weed out negative thoughts that might inhibit the growth. I water all with prayers and meditation. And I fertilize with faith. I sincerely believe that it is possible for me to live each day from the full awareness of the divine power within me. If I will be totally committed to taking good care of the soil of my consciousness. Weeding out any thoughts or actions that hurt rather than heal. And set aside quietly time for prayer and meditation. For these are the things that are going to bring me the spiritual growth that I need, I feel, to make this life a productive life. As I say, we often look around us each day and we see things that are hurtful, things that are harmful, things that do not heal any of us. But just as in our garden, you know, we have to be, it doesn't just happen. When Jazz was playing that song Inch by Inch, there was such a beautiful garden, and I looked up and I said, wow, I wish I could do that. I wish that that was my garden. And then I have to stop and say, you know what? That can be my garden if I'm willing to put forth the effort to make that my garden. And you know, sometimes in this life, we want things that we haven't worked for. But just like I say, God doesn't hand us a ready-made garden. He says, I have placed within you, just as I placed in that tomato. See, I planted within you that perfect pattern. But it's up to you to cultivate that pattern. It's up to you to say, you know, I truly want to do what's right to do, irregardless as to what somebody else does. But then somebody else comes along with some weed thoughts, and I often allow those weed thoughts to grow in my garden as well. And then I want to blame somebody else for the weeds that are growing. But it was I who did not take that time to say, no, you know, I think not. I think I'll let you have this one. But you know, that's not often easy for us to do. Because like I said, we get impressions from the divine constantly. God is nudging us, He's tapping us. But we don't always listen. I don't always listen. But I know that again, that perfect pattern is there within me. When I've taken the time to truly stop, and as Jazz said, you know, something that I have to stop each day, meditate and pray. You know, but I've got to go to work. I've got other things to do. I just don't have time right now today, you know, to stop, to meditate, you know. I'll find time tomorrow. And the next thing you know, you look out there and the weeds are just taking over. And again, whose fault is it but mine? Because I was not willing to make the commitment. Me, I have to be willing to make that commitment each day that I'm going to set aside quality time to stop, to meditate, and to pray. And it's, like I said, this spiritual journey for me is not an easy one. Sometimes when you least expect it, when I least expect it, something out of the blue just comes along and zap. You know, it's just like me out in the garden and all of a sudden I step into a pile of red ants. Now why in the world? Why in the world? But you know what I found? That usually when I'm agitated, I draw to me those things that are agitated. They feel my vibrations. Because I forget that this perfect pattern of God is within me that works itself. You know, we forget all of this is part of God's creation. The feelings, the emotions, our joy, our anger. Because when you go out and you're full of anger, you're going to attract anger. And we sometimes see a world where there's, you know, a lot of things that we don't maybe like to see. And we say, but what just me? What good can I do? Just me. You know, all this stuff is going on. What difference am I going to make? And then, you know, I look at my garden, and I was thinking the other day with all of that which is going on, I saw a little bee in a flower. It didn't know nothing about what's going on out in this world. That perfect pattern within itself, God's self said, if I do what I'm supposed to do, if I go about pollinating and cultivating that which I'm supposed to do, perhaps the rest of the world will begin to fall into place as well. So as I say, my garden brings me a lot of happiness, and it also brings me a lot of thoughts of why and what and how. But I have to go back and say again, you know, that perfect pattern, even though I don't understand it, even though I'm not at that place where I want to be, I know that God's power is still within me. I don't have to have all the answers today to be happy, to be joyful, and to try to bring that happiness and that joy to somebody else. I don't have to have all of the answers in order to heal and not hurt. For I know that if I begin to truly cultivate the soil of my divine self, that I can joyfully embrace the infinite potential of this beautiful earth garden that I call home. Thank you.
Wonderful, Dr. Barbara.
I wanted to say
Great.
a word. In my 88 years, in my 60-some years of being a priest, I don't believe I've heard such a wonderful